Hello, everyone. I had just finished last night reading revisions of your discussion sections, and wow, I just could not be prouder of the academic writers you have all become over the course of the last year. So keep up the great work. You are almost done. I'm going to keep this screencast nice and short because this last section tends to be the easiest for people to write because they really feel like they can write with their full voice. And this is where you kind of put it all together and talk about why that your specific research project was important to you, but also, as I talked about with that podcast discussion prompt, how this whole process of action research has been beneficial to you as an educator. So that's what's going into this conclusion and future implications section. So if you can see on my screen, hopefully, it's of course going to start with the first level heading again, conclusion and future implications. And then even though it doesn't talk about what the introduction looks like here, you do need to say something here, even though it doesn't necessarily have to have an introduction heading. So make sure you have something there that just kind of brings up the idea that this is the conclusion of your paper. So then the first, second level heading, and it does mention in the template that these are loose headings. You don't have to have them, or you can call them something else if you want. However, as the template writes, these headings are some of the things that you'll be required to talk about in ProSeminar, and so it's a good idea to follow these headings so then you have stuff in your paper already prepared for that presentation at ProSeminar this summer. So the first heading or second level heading is called importance of the study. So this is going where you're going to talk about why this study is important to you, to your students, and to the larger field of education. So the why it was important to you and your students is pretty easy. You know, it helped me understand this about learning with my particular kids. It helped, the intervention helped my students in this way, or help me understand more about my students and better to teach them. But the one part that people usually trip up on is, why is this study important to the greater kind of education field? So it kind of goes back to your literature review. If you think about when you were trying to find that hole in the wall, remember the big boulder wall we talked about? And you were trying to place your study within all those boulders, and you're trying to find what we call a literature gap. So, it's different for all of you. Some of you have a very clear literature gap, meaning, people have studied this with these types of students, but it's never been studied in this way, the way I'm doing it. Others of you, the research gap is not as clear, so just do your best. But basically you're trying to say, here's where my study and my results add to the research literature that was already out there. And I'm adding my little stone, my little pebble in the wall of that big research field in that, whatever it might be. So that it needs to be included in the importance of the study also. So why was it important to you? Why was it important to your students? And why was it important to the larger field of education? All right, the next section then is about lessons learned. So this can be a wide variety of things. So it can be specifically what you learn from your study about the specific research question you have. It can be lessons learned about the research process, maybe things you might have done differently in your research design had you had this experience now going forward. It could also be, and I really hope it will be, why lessons learned over the whole research process. So maybe you learned that, wow, when you have a problem in your class, it's a really great idea to go to the research literature and see what's out there and see what people have tried in the past before you try something in your own classroom. So anything, again, about that whole research action process that you've gone through over the last year, lessons you've learned from that, skills you've taken away from that can be included in this section as well. You could also include professional lessons learned, like I learned that I can be a really great academic writer, and it just takes lots of revision. Great writing isn't just a natural thing; it's a skill of revision after revision after revision, as you've learned this year. So, like I said, you can put a wide variety of things in there. I would say it needs to be at least a few paragraphs at the minimum, but some people have written a couple pages in that section alone. All right, and then the third second level heading is, where are you going from here? So again, it can be very specific to your study, and in fact, you should for sure have how has this study impacted your practice? That should be a first starting point. So I learned this from my research question and my data. So I'm going to do this in the future about writer's workshop, or I'm going to do this in the future for decoding strategies, or whatever your research was on. It can also be, what are you going to do in the future with these new research skills that you have? And how is it going to kind of impact you as a practitioner going forward? Some of you mentioned in your blog post, which I was so happy with, that this has caused you to be more reflective about how you're using data, how you're looking at data. It's allowed you to just be more specific in your active reflection that you're doing as a teacher. So all those things can be part of this section as well. So each of the sections sound very similar, but they have and there can be overlap between them. There can be a little bit of carryover, but they all have particular purposes. So again, the first one is, what was the importance of the study? What were the lessons learned? And what's going to happen going forward in your practice, in your professional life as a teacher educator? I'm sorry, as an educator. So that is the section. You end it right there. You can include another little mini conclusion like you have to the other sections. You don't have to, it's not part of the template, but some people just don't feel really great about how it leaves off with future implications, and they want to put a little conclusion at the end, and that's just fine. So that would be an additional second level heading here. You would just put conclusion like you have for the other sections and bold it. And that is going to be due March 11th. We're going to keep the due date. If anybody has any problems with that due date, that's okay. If you're going on vacation for spring break, trying to get away from the Iowa snow, let me know. But I'd like to keep the due date because we're going to need a little bit of time to do some really careful editing to our papers next. And then we're going to work on getting you guys ready for pro seminar after that, before the end of the semester. So I'd like to keep the due date to be March 11th. It's not a real hard and fast due date. It's flexible. So just communicate with me if you don't think you'll be able to get it in by then. And let's see. We'll do revisions with that as well. I'm not going to have any discussion posts while you're working on this. So this is your main assignment for the next 2 weeks. And let me know if you have any questions. I hope you're all doing well. I hope you are getting really close to your spring breaks, and hopefully Iowa will get some better weather. I don't want to brag, but it's been in the 80s here this last week. My kids are in shorts. But, I'm sure I'll be complaining about the heat in a few months, and you guys will have, more enjoyable weather. So I really appreciate all the professional work ethic you guys have been putting into this, and especially with me being a distance educator here. So I really appreciate all the communication that's going both ways. And keep up the great work. And I'll be back to talk to you in a couple of weeks after I read through these last and final chapters of your paper. Bye, guys.